Dad, what are we sowing today?
We're sowing broad beans, really big seeds, really easy to sow.
Okay. And what time of year do we usually sow these?
So it depends a little bit on what you want to do with them.
Yeah.
If you want to gorge on them for about a month, you can just do one succession of them.
Yeah.
And you might do that in November. Alternatively, if you do what we want to do, which is eat nice kind of fresh broad beans all the way through the season, then you'll do a few successions, and I'll actually show you some of those a bit later on, because this is our last succession that we're sowing in February.
Okay. So how deep do we need to sow these seeds?
If we're doing them in the ground, we'd put them in about an inch deep, and it's probably about the same in the modules. And you kind of got this option, you could either lay them flat like that, or you can put them on the sides like that.
Yeah.
I just prefer to put them on the sides because they push in easier, but also some people say it's less likely for them to rot.
Okay.
And we're doing them in these small modules. This is a 12 cell tray, and that is fine provided you're going to get them planted out quite young.
Yeah.
When the plants are sort of, an inch, 2 inches high.
Yeah.
If you were going to keep them in the modules for any longer, you'd want to probably put them in a 9 cell tray or something like that.
Yeah.
So basically, if you were doing them in the ground, you'd basically do them pretty much the same as that.
Yeah. Okay. So now these have been sown, where do we put them now?
So broad beans, they'll germinate right down to sort of 3 or 4 degrees centigrade in the ground in winter, pretty much. So you can pretty much put them anywhere.
Yeah.
They will germinate nicely in a house as well, or a polytunnel greenhouse, anywhere you want really.
Okay, perfect.
And we want to give them a good water because they're quite thick seed shells. So I'm just planting these little broad beans. Normally I just use a dibber, but because there's so few to do, I'm just going to make the holes with my fingers like this. I think we'll only get 8 in this bed. It's really well watered as well, so we won't need to water them in. And with beans, we don't plant them deep, so we just plant them at the level that they are in the modules. These are quite nice, and there's a good little root system on there, but they're not root bound. So we just pop them in like that. You could of course do beans directly in the ground, but it is nice to do it like this because then you get to eat the beans rather than the mice, which is what often happens otherwise.
Okay, so these are the seeds that we sowed about 2 months ago.
They are, and they've just been under this little bit of netting here just to protect them a little bit from some high winds that we've recently had. But that's going to come off pretty soon, and we'll start supporting these with individual canes. So 1 cane for each plant like this.
Okay.
And they'll be ready in a couple of months' time.
Okay, so it looks like these ones are much further on now.
Yeah, so these are ones that we sowed about a month earlier. So these are the 10th of January,
Okay.
and the others were the 14th of February.
Okay.
And these are now being supported by these canes.
Yeah.
And as they grow, we'll add additional canes and tie them into the canes.
Wow, Dad, these are absolutely massive now. They don't look like broad beans at all.
I know. These are actually the same batch of seedlings as the ones that we've just seen.
Yeah.
But these were grown in the polytunnel. And, broad beans make a really fun crop to grow in a polytunnel in a big container. You just get them like 2 or 3 weeks earlier, and you can see these now are all in flower. And they're really great.
So, Dad, how do we water them at this point?
So really, broad beans, because they're growing mainly in the cool season, rainwater is pretty much all you need for watering until the beans start to form and they start to swell.
Yeah.
And then maybe a couple of good waters every week if it's not raining.
Yeah.
And that'll help you get the maximum crop.
Okay.
In a container like this, then they probably need watering every week.
Okay. And what about pests and diseases of them?
So not so many diseases.
Okay.
But pests, the one that's really notorious is blackfly.
Okay.
And blackfly, they love this tender growing tip on your plants.
Yeah.
And so once your plants are kind of in good flower,
Mhm.
you just pinch this growing tip out. So you take each growing tip.
Yep.
And that means that basically nothing for the black fly to feast on, and the plant just stops also sort of wasting energy, keeping on growing, and puts all its energy into actually just growing the beans.
Yeah.
And you can eat that as well, so that is like a spinach substitute. So anywhere basically you can use spinach in a recipe, you can
Yeah.
use those bean tips.
It's great.